All right, so let's talk about how using the logic that we just saw with cosmetics applies to fighting trait with one addition. So same as cosmetic, it could be random or genetic bar. And if it rolls genetic, then it'll be any of four outcomes with the percentage likelihood of each outcome being dependent on the four values and the sum of those four values. Let's say it's omega, and we're trying to pass on the omega trait down to the half-blood. Using the strength values here in the example previously, there'd be an 18% chance that we get the strength of the blood taker, a 9% chance that we get the strength of somebody in the blood taker's ancestry that's not the blood taker, a 46% chance that we get the strength from the blood giver, and a 27% chance that we get the strength trait from somebody in the blood giver's ancestry that's not the blood giver. And again, keep in mind, if the blood taker and blood giver in this scenario are both purebloods, then you have a 27% chance of taking strength from the blood taker champ and a 73% chance of taking the strength trait from the blood giver. So in addition to all this, which we already know, there's a third component that comes to fighting traits that doesn't apply to cosmetics. There's an additional role of variance or a likelihood that you can pass on improved traits to champions that you're summoning. And that likelihood of improving a fighting trait is going to be tied directly to the genotypes of the parents. 1 to 3, or Genesis champions, is the most likely to pass on improved traits, followed by Mystic champions are 4 to 6, Lionheart 7 to 9, and Warlord 10 to 12, which are two bloodlines that haven't been released yet or minted. And then all the half-bloods and soulless that come afterwards are least likely. One important thing to note is that the variance that you get on this chart comes from the lowest R number in the pairing. So an R1 and an R6 summoned together has the same most likelihood of improving a fighting trait. So an R1-R1 pairing has no more likelihood to improving a fighting trait than an R1-R6 pairing, because in both pairings, the lowest R number is R1. It's also important to note that when determining fighting traits, if a fighting trait is generated randomly, then it is not influenced by the genotype of the blood taker or the blood giver. So if we go back here and this if it rolls genetic, then if it rolls genetic, everything here we said applies. One of the four options gets chosen based on the percentages, and then there is a variance roll based on the lowest R number here. But if it ends up rolling random and we never even touch any genetic possibilities, that random trait value would not be affected in any way by the genotypes. In other words, all genotypes have the same chance of achieving any given random fighting trait. Which ties back nicely to this bit of alpha, which I'll share again. Just like a golden ticket, there is a chance that anyone can summon the best champion in the game. A few quick things also to note in terms of fighting traits, or at least traits that are related to how your champion performs in the arena. Special attack and special defense behave slightly differently when determining these fighting trait values for the summoned champion. These are calculated using an equation that takes into account the special attack or defense probability of the blood taker and the blood giver, so what percentage you'd see on like TRV tools or My Villagers. The higher the special attack or defense of the parent champions, the higher the summoned champion special is likely to be. So generally speaking, you want to have the highest special attack percentages possible in order to pass on the highest special attack percentage possible for the summoned champion. But it's important to note that this calculation is done in such a way to ensure that no summoned champion will ever have as high a special attack or defense likelihood as the purebloods. So the purebloods will always have the highest special attack and defense percentages over the life cycle of the game. Second to last, genotypes. Just so you know how the R number pairings work, essentially you take the R number of the two parents, add them together, and then add 11. So an R1 and an R1 is 2, plus 11 is 13, so they summon an R13. An R6 and an R6 is 12, plus 11, they summon an R23. And this logic goes on over and over and over again throughout all the multiple generations and cycles of summoning. an R25, and an R25 is 50 plus 11 makes an R61, so on and so forth. Once you have a pairing of two champions that produces an R number that is greater than 99, that creates what's called a soulless. And a soulless is a genotype that is undefinable, an RX or R, whatever it ends up being. And those champions will only be able to summon with pure blood champions in order to extend their bloodline further. Please note that genotype is an important fighting trait, as when fighting in tournaments, the champion with the lowest R number gets the first strike. The champion striking first gets a small advantage as combat. So the first strikes, if you don't already know, are nerfed. So they're not the same amount of power as a basic attack, but in a game that can be very, very close sometimes, that can come down to just a few HP, just a little bit blood left. Anytime you can try to get yourself an edge is possible. So definitely trying to optimize for the smallest R number you can for the champ that you summon is definitely a worthy endeavor. One last note about fighting stance. The preferred stance of the summon champion is completely random and is not inherited by either the blood taker or the blood giver. If a summon champion has the same preferred stance as either the blood taker or the blood giver, it is only a coincidence. So before I send you over to the how to summon video, where we talk about how to list your champion in the spell book, buy some blood, do a private summoning, I just want to do one more video going over some of the tips and tricks for summoning. You can check that video out right here.